Hello there everyone, welcome to a second thoughts overview of Queek Headtaker of the Skaven. Now I played through the initial turns as always and have some conclusions on how they play. Allow me to list what I think about the faction and then later show some armies for you to try out. Now disclaimer time, this is not an in-depth guide, but it's certainly useful to you, even to veterans for certain. Without further, let's go play with Queek Headtaker. For your short victory condition, it is quite simple. Conquer Carrick 8 Peaks and destroy the Crooked Moon Mutinous Gits, Crooked Moon, and Clan Angrund. Let's show you. They're pretty close by, but Clan Angrund is quite far away over here on the other side, let's say, of the Gulf here. Now you also need to occupy, loot, raise, or sack 30 different settlements. This forces you into kind of two directions. Like, not only you need to reach here, but conquer this and conquer here. So it may be difficult. The reward is +3 recruit ranked for all units. It's a good buff to ensure you always get at least some better quality troops right at the start. For the long victory, of course, as always, achieve the short victory. Occupy, loot, raise, or sack 75 different settlements. And then you need to control at least 7 of the following settlements. Now let me show you a few. So you can see on the minimap there how close they are. Of course, it includes Carrick 8 Peaks, so it's kind of like 6, really. Skaven Blight is pretty far away. Nagashizar, it's close, right? Crookback Mountain, kind of close. But then we're getting close. We're getting busy, actually. So Altdorf, Mount Gunbad is close. Altar of the Horned Wreck is... Why? Why do we do this? Iron Rock. So you can see that there's a lot, but pretty far away as well. You can see how far away some of these are. So it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while, and there's some obvious choices, of course, if you want to do it, but yeah, it's difficult. For the reward, +2 global recruitment capacity faction-wide. Well, it's not the best, but Skaven do lose some units here and there, so it kind of helps. Now, Queek is the Gnawdwell's right claw, so he enjoys some buffs. +2 hero capacity for chieftains. Upkeep -25% for Storm Vermin and Clan Rats. So, of course, Storm Vermin will probably become a staple in your armies with Queek here. You can purchase up to +5 additional levels of the Menace Below before each battle, which is great. It's a great mechanic. And in terms of food cost, -33% for additional uses of the Menace Below. Basically, when you start any battle, I'll explain those in the mechanics, but when you start any battle, you can have the additional clan rats that you can summon by the Menace Below. In terms of climate, it's actually one of the best of the Warhammer 2 factions. So only to the north it's unpleasant. It's only unpleasant. Then uninhabitable, it's literally just Temperate Island and Magical Forest. Let me explain what that means. It's very simple. Ulthuan is a problem. Part of it at least, and then the Magical Forests. But otherwise, look at this. It's honestly one of the best factions to conquer the map with, particularly considering that they are a Warhammer 2 faction. You remember perhaps seeing the Lizardmen, the High Elves, they don't have that. So Skaven, yeah, great for domination. Your starting location is quite interesting, as you're really close to Carrick 8 Peaks, and your initial province has 3 settlements, but you do start on a minor one with a specific building that kind of helps. Now, because you're so close, you're the best faction that is in the race for Carrick 8 Peaks to actually get it, so go for it. That's the typical expansion. You know, conquering perhaps the initial province, maybe one or another, but then rush to Carrick 8 Peaks as soon as you feel you have the power to take it, of course. Now, typical expansion afterwards goes into the north to defeat Crooked Moon and perhaps conquer everything. There's some good mines around this area, so that could be your case, your idea. But you also need to take care of Clan Angrund, so yeah, it is difficult, but certainly manageable. Now, typical south issues will happen, because of course you're very close to Khorne, to vampire counts. Of course, you do have good relations with Khorne, maybe you can use that in your advantage. In terms of diplomacy, Skaven are typically in the neutral space, more leaning towards the evil faction. Some greenskins, vampire counts, Khorne may become your friends eventually. So you can see here how they don't have too much aversion there. Even if it was big, they do have some good attitude. So maybe the south area is actually generous to you. Who knows? Maybe it will change. It's up to you, of course. Now, depending on how well your war goes, you may get friends with those that are at war with them. So if you manage to get them into the same war, of course they'll start becoming friendly, and maybe you get some alliances. So Khorne, ogres, and maybe even vampire counts would be my outpost selection. Let me show you some units that I would get. So as you can see here, from Khorne, anything kind of elite from them, it would be nice. Some good infantry, some good cavalry. From ogres, mostly the cavalry, that's what I would take. Of course you can take all their units, of course, but that's what I would use. And from the vampire counts, one thing that you don't really have, it's flying units. They are always very versatile, very useful. And some cavalry, of course, wouldn't be a problem. It would be really good for some nice army compositions. So for mechanics, let me show you the Menace Below. Basically, a unit of clan rats that you can summon during the battlefield, and you can use this 4 times, or you can increase that with the food. Notice how it's dropping right there. So it's really good to disrupt enemy artillery, enemy missiles, for instance. So yeah, a very nice ability that you can have. This increases, of course, also with the corruption, the Skaven corruption, that allows you a little bit more and grants you some bonuses on that province. Okay, so for instance, you can see that it allows you more from the Skaven corruption, +1, you see there. Undercities, for instance, are a very nice idea. They provide vision over the area, and you can generate food and income depending on which buildings you're constructing there. Do note that you have a discoverability rating, which basically means that the city can be discovered and destroyed. So you should always be wary of that. There's some buildings that try to conceal that. So yeah, those should always be built sometimes, or specifically they should always be built when you really don't want to lose that city. And the end part of this is to try and build up the Rat King, the War Camp, and then the Vermintide here, which would basically summon a Skaven army to attack the settlement. This is great, especially if you have an army nearby. They can take advantage of that, but it's up to you. It's just an interesting ability in essence. Food is your unique currency. It is important to keep finding it, more to avoid the penalties, as you can see those, than to actually gain the benefits. Benefits are decent, you know, some growth, some control, some leadership. Leadership is important actually for the Skaven because they lack it. However, it's mostly to avoid all those penalties. As you can see, those are terrible indeed. Now, food can also be used when capturing a settlement to turn it into a higher level, which ensures good strategic advantages over other factions. Now, capturing 8 peaks allows you a tremendous bonus. On the start of your turn, lords have a chance to gain +1 loyalty, which is great. It will make sure that they don't lose their loyalty and they don't rebel for you. Lord recruit rank +2 always helps, but the passive ability there, the frenzy for clan rats and storm vermin, that's what makes those units really good. They are already good. I like using some storm vermin especially. They're the only downside of them is that they are expensive, but you can control that. But still, with the frenzy, they do become really, really good. Now, it also adds the buildings that you can get in Carrick 8 Peaks. Now, it is only a 6-slot building, province, sorry, which is kind of bad. But you do have this plundered dwarven treasury for a lot of income and less reduced upkeep for a lot of units for your armies. And then you get this one, which is even casual replenishment rate, more food, etc. Lots of buffs there. And the Blackhorn Swamp, which is even more casualty replenishment rate. So one good thing is that suddenly with these buildings, Carrick 8 Peaks can become a good hub for you to replenish and attack other places. So you can use this basically as a good base of operations to go everywhere at once if you wish. Now, an additional mechanic that I should mention is how the Skaven actually have a chance of ambushing any enemy army on their natural stance. So every battle you initiate has a chance to become an ambush. Some army compositions are just entirely possible just because of this. In adding to that, they also have the rights. So the dominating scheme, food generated, growth for all provinces, control, recruitment costs, nothing bad here, just really good buffs overall for you to grow and ensure you don't have enough food, etc. In terms of the 13th scheme, so the 13 being the number for the Skaven basically. So diplomatic relations with Skaven, chance to gain 2 loyalty, hero action successes and stuff, and this army ability, which is decent, of course. I've used this once in a while, of course, it's useful, but most of the time I like running with this. Then we have 2 heroes that you can get. A Plague Priest to spread a deadly plague, and a Warlock Engineer capable of targeting to either establish an undercity or cause an earthquake there. So both of these are really useful. Of course, note they're not expensive at all, so as soon as they are available, just use them, get that hero, and let's go and put a plague somewhere and just establish an undercity as well. Those are always excellent ideas. In terms of army stances, they're quite good. You can ambush while attacking. This is the bread and butter of the faction. You also have the typical ambush. Campaign movement range cost of 25%. This means that it's when you're concealing the army so they can come in against you. And then you can still, if they don't fall for the ambush, you can still ambush it nevertheless. So that's quite a good one. You can also raid. This generates food as well at a typical movement range penalty of 50%. You also have in-camp. Basically costs 50% move. Typical buffs that it gives. Underway, which has all the different strategies that you can use, which is excellent. And Winds of Magic stance. Now this is kind of moot. It's not one that I'll use the most, especially with, well, you can defend the use of that, but most of the time I'll prefer to try an ambush than getting just some more magic to fight on that. But it's good that we have it. I don't mind that we have options, of course. Now for the province edicts, we have a control and corruption, always nice. Growth and construction costs for all buildings. We also have a recruitment cost and local recruitment capacity, and then we have a Skaven corruption and food generated. This is very typical, very useful indeed. Now, this minus corruption may seem overlooked, but it's different. That implies that it is reducing, any corn corruption or any vampire corruption. You see, that's the idea behind that edict right there. For the buildings, we already spoke about the undercities. They all have a unique requirement, which is discoverability. You keep that in check and all goes well. So go back to the mechanics and check that out. But basically, discoverability is really easy. Don't make it discover. Now, you have 6 military buildings for full military, 5 of which must be built for completeness in the capital. So the tier 3, it's not bad. It does allow a hero, the Chieftain, which is nice. And you have some anti-large and anti-infantry unit, basically, or a holding unit. So yeah, can't complain. Now, they have good combos of units at tier 3. So it includes Storm Vermin, some Gutter Runners, some Rattling Guns, and Poison Wind Global Tiers. You do have the Plague Call Catapults, the Red Ogres, the Plague Monks, some heroes as well. So it's not like you're defenseless without exploring the tier 4 or 5. Of course, tier 4 and 5 units really good as well. Especially tier 4, where you get the Jezzails, where you get the Poison Wind Mortars, and you also get the Warp Lightning Cannons, one of the best anti-large units in the game, basically. So yeah, all buildings, as if you've seen here, they generate income and Skaven corruption as well. Now, the infrastructure, let's talk about it. You have a growth and casualty replenishment. Of course, like I said, income and Skaven corruption, everyone gives it. You also have a food generated in Skaven and income from all buildings right there. You also have a basic income and recruitment cost, and all other types of corruption denial. Corruption denial is really cool. You don't have a lot of ways to deny that corruption easily. And you have a very jack of all trades, like I like to say, which is the one that gives you control, gives you hero and lord and unit recruit rank, basically. So yeah, overall a good set of them. Decent ones which you should also consider just to unlock the necessary research. You can see the small icon there that ensures that some of these buildings are necessary to unlock research. Speaking of research, it is quite extensive. I like it. I really like when there's lots of research. It means you can play for longer and still have something more to check out for. Many of them are locked behind buildings, like I said. They do buff a lot of your units adequately as well. Even the lower quality units, and then we get this for rat ogres, for hell pit abominations, you know. So that's really cool. They also give you, of course, buffs for campaign, you know, like control here, like loyalty for new recruits, etc. Some more food generated. And one interesting is that it adds units to the Vermintide. So the more you get to the technology, the more powerful your Vermintide will be, which is always a nice idea for you to, you know, just suddenly drop out a nice Vermintide and the enemy can't cope with it. Yeah, that is it. As always, we have Lord-specific skills, melee or yellow line, red line or army, and blue line or campaign. Now, Queek has some combat, basic, and some faction effects, and an interesting loyalty favoritism here. He prefers Warlord instead of Grey Seers, so keep an eye on that. Now, the blue line does not have actually replenishment, as you see me like it, but he does have an ability that does it, you know, over here. So of course he kind of has it, it's just not down here. Now upkeep is there, we do have some income from post-battle loot, but nothing really out of the ordinary. Now they do have, oh yeah, I wanted to say this, they do have an ambush success chance. Now this is important because it plays into the faction, you know, so this is one that I would definitely choose in order to go through the blue line. Now, the red line allows crazy cool combinations. Definitely one of the most interesting rosters just based on that. They have quite cheap combinations too, allowing you to spend skill points in other areas easily as well. Now, in terms of lords and heroes, you have quite a selection. Let me show you that. So for lords, you have 4 types, you know, basically a wizard, the master assassin, warlock master. It's kind of a secondary wizard, let's say. Bonuses to weapons teams, you'll see later on. And a warlord, basically what Queek is, but just less powerful. And in terms of heroes, again, 4 of them: chieftain, assassin, packmaster, and warlock engineer. Basically the assassin focusing of course on buffing knight runners and gutter runners, warlocks engineer buffs weapons teams, and packmasters buff monsters. So 2 of these heroes get actually the traits that I like, which is replenishment to the troops. So you can actually enjoy quite a lot easily. It's very easy actually to get there. So by all means, you'll always have some replenishment. It's one of the best factions for it. But yeah, you can see the choices that you have in terms of lords and heroes. So reaching the first line and the second line of red line skills for the Skaven, basically tons of good combinations really that they have. Now do note that the second line kind of mixes everything up. You can see that it kind of joins some over here, some over here. So be on the lookout to take the maximum of all of your units. Typically you would want some form of ranged units and melee units. So although nothing wrong on going all out in one of the cases, as long as you have fun with it. It's one of the best factions actually to just try out different combinations. Now let's see a few. So Queek has faction-wide bonuses for Storm Vermin, a little bit less upkeep always helps, and some armor for the clan rats there, some leadership for the Lord's army. So of course I can have a standard line of Storm Vermin there with some weapons teams, some artillery there. It does great. You can try also a monster-based army with some artillery there. It's up to you. You can see how relatively average those are. Okay, the good for me, but average basically. At least it because Queek doesn't have any too many skill points. Of course, he can do this very easily. Now, in terms of the weapons engineers, they're better used for weapons teams. You can see the kind of like a full army of weapons teams with just a couple of artillery. You can see that this is a staple of kind of my armies. I always like to have a couple of artillery units just because they're so good. You know, warp lightnings are single entity killers. Trust me, they'll kill off a lot of the enemy lords, for instance, very fast, very easily. Provided they have, you know, line of sight, of course. Now, they don't buff Doom Flayers and Doom Wheels more than just recruitment duration and recruit rank, which is sad. I wish they had some more, but you can always use them as well in the armies. Finally, we do have some sneaky stabbing. It's always nice. Now, Night Runners can become great skirmishers under these guys. And your infantry can basically just clean up afterwards and some monsters. Or you can try this army, see if you can find out what is special about them. Everyone has Vanguard, and everyone here also can Stalk. So you can imagine how much fun you can have with an army like this, where the enemy, really, they won't detect you. They won't see you at all. Now, yeah, just make sure that you realize that it's inexpensive in terms of the red line. Let me go back here. I didn't mention, but yeah, quite inexpensive. So I really like the Skaven precisely because of that. It allows you some more flexibility. So let me say something about the Skaven. They're one, if not the faction that everyone dismisses it until they play them. They have amazing replay value. Great mechanics that just give you a feel of being in true control of a swarm of rats that wrecks everything in its path. They have a variety of playing styles, as you've seen, so many different units and different armies and different ideas. But with Queek, I would take advantage to go for a melee range style. Nothing wrong with variety, though. Now, for the army, they have good infantry, great missile infantry and artillery, good monstrous infantry and single entities, great heroes and very varied, no flying units, and no real cavalry, just dogs. Those don't count, really. Replenishment is great, especially considering the climate. You probably will recover your army to full in no time. I believe now it is time, indeed, yes, to follow Queek into battle.